You don't design and build an organization, right? You cultivate it. And so I think we all, as individuals, I always want to make sure that I'm not, pointing my finger at anybody. I'm pointing it back at myself to say I can do these things to make the organization more human-centric, and also to take the focus off of those metrics, those so-called business outcomes, to say, look, the purpose of any organization is to increase human flourishing and to decrease suffering. That's why we got together in bands, when we knew that we would hunt better and survive longer together than separately. The same thing is true of today's organizations. That's the point of the organization. And the financials are a metaphor. They're a metric, right? They're an outcome, but the real outcome is that humans are living better lives, and ideally taking care of the planet and all the other living beings that are on this planet.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Eryc Eyl. Eryc is a human-centric leadership catalyst who transforms workplaces in an unforgettable way by DJing. Drawing on 30 years of experience in workplace culture and change management, Eryc uses the art of mixing music to illustrate powerful leadership disciplines that get results. His high-energy keynotes combine expert insights with electrifying DJ sets that leave audiences inspired, energized, and equipped to cultivate human-centric workplaces. As a speaker, coach, consultant, and author of Stop Engaging Employees, Start Making Work More Human, Eryc believes work should be a path to greater satisfaction, fulfillment, and flourishing for all. Congrats on cultivating human-centric workplaces, and welcome to the Human Connection podcast.
Thanks so much.
I'm really excited to have you on the show to kind of break down the topic or the subject of your book. The title really intrigues me. The Stop Engaging Employees, Start Making Work More Human, because employee engagement is one of those words that gets used so much and is so overly kind of corporate speak that it loses some of its meaning, and people don't really know what to do with it or how to actually engage people, what that even means anymore. So I would love to hear your approach to and reframing that process from employee engagement to making work more human. What does that look like to you?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And I will say, like, first of all, I always, because that title is intentionally sort of provocative, right? Stop engaging employees seems like a crazy thing to say. And I just want to start with the fact that employee engagement as a phenomenon is a good thing. It is good when we are engaged at work. The point of that title, Stop Engaging Employees, is that it's not something that we should be trying to do to people. That's not how we work, right? That's not how humans work. You can't make people be engaged. I always say that engagement is an emotional connection and commitment. And you can't make people feel that any more than you can make people fall in love with you, which is a creepy thing to try to do. It's a creepy thing to try to engage people at work, right? So the making work more human is really getting back to exactly what you talk about, Carl, which is that connection, that human connection at work, and how as leaders we can practice a few key disciplines that help us to create the conditions in which it's more likely that people will become engaged, rather than trying to change the people. So that's what that's about, really.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that like you said, the engagement comes from evoking emotions in people and inspiring people to act instead of trying to force it. I think the employee engagement comes across from this systematized mindset of, if you do X, Y, and Z, then you're going to get this predictable result, and it's trackable, and there's all these metrics around it that so many businesses are run by, or kind of the executives like to have these dashboards and all this data to keep track of, but it doesn't work as well because people are messy, and no two people are going to respond the same way to the same input and the same relationships, and they have different needs. And even I'm find myself mentioning this more and more lately, just as the research into kind of neurodiversity is advancing. We're going to realize that the idea of there being a normal human brain doesn't really exist. Everyone is slightly different, and so, and we are inherently kind of irrational and make decisions using emotion instead of logic. And so, when you're trying to engage people as from the standpoint of let's build a system for employee engagement, it's almost impossible because you're ignoring the kind of human side of the equation, which is gonna start you off in the wrong direction from the get-go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I love the way you describe that, because I think the like ignoring that part of people that are people is a big mistake. And I think the big mistake that's in there, there's a couple of things. So first of all, we all have our own needs and aspirations and fears and motivations, right? And there's some universal ones, but there are also some uniqueness to each of us, right? So I look at human-centric leadership as being about tending to those needs, aspirations, fears, motivations, so that people can flourish, right? And so they will become engaged, and part of that engagement is about the flourishing. And I think that's the other piece that I think is a mistake, is to see when we talk about engaging employees, we start to view them ourselves as instruments to some other end, as opposed to the main characters in their own story, right? And I think this is a big opportunity for us to realize, okay, each of us is the main character in our story, and how can we not treat people as means to an end, but realize that if you treat people as people, the ends will be accomplished. That's kind of how I look at that.
Yeah, and it sounds a lot like the giver's gain mindset, where if you just go around expecting people to give you what you want without giving them something that they need first, it's never going to work, because you're trying to make a withdrawal from a bank account that's at zero.
Right.
So it's and I think it shows the importance of having multiple leaders at different levels of the company that have these skills that are able to. You need this throughout your entire organization, because it's hard for the executive team of a big company to know all the frontline workers and stuff. But if each team leader has built builds these connections with their direct reports and up and are all through the organization, then it creates an overall culture and sense of connection and alignment with the whole business. But it's not something that, it doesn't scale in the way I think people want in the same kind of way that people are thinking about scaling systems. Yeah. And so but when you actually, like you said, when you actually build these sorts of relationships and have that human-centric approach throughout the organization, then you get this amazing ROI from it, and the kind of bottom line results that the leadership is really looking for. Because when employees are engaged and they feel that sense of belonging, connection, and alignment, then they're going to perform better and treat the clients better. The clients get a better experience. They're more likely to renew and buy more and refer and promote the business. And so the overall health of the company goes up. But it really requires that initial reframe on the leadership team and the executive team to go, okay, we need to see people as people and meet them where they are and build these relationships, this human-centric side of things, and then to achieve that quote unquote engagement. But it's more, like I said, about approaching it from a human relationship side of thing rather than a human resources side of things, which, again, another term that kind of defeats the purpose of the department, because it sucks all the humanity out of the relationship.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Sucks the humanity out of the relationship. That is exactly right. And I think this is part of the reason that I'd like to talk about leadership as not just being about the hierarchical position of leadership, but also that a leader can be anywhere in the organization. Right. That I define a leader as anyone working to help others become the best version of themselves. And so that's you, that's me. regardless of our title within an organization, right? And so I think when we start to practice these disciplines, regardless of where we are in the hierarchy, then we start to sort of create those conditions. We start to at least cultivate those conditions, because I think it's a lot more like gardening than it is like engineering or construction or carpentry. You don't design and build an organization, right? You cultivate it. And so I think we all, as individuals, I always want to make sure that I'm not, pointing my finger at anybody. I'm pointing it back at myself, to say I can do these things to make the organization more human-centric, and also to take the focus off of those metrics, those so-called business outcomes, to say, look, the purpose of any organization is to increase human flourishing and to decrease suffering. That's why we got together in bands, when we knew that we would hunt better and survive longer together than separately. The same thing is true of today's organizations. That's the point of the organization. And the financials are a metaphor. They're a metric, right? They're an outcome, but the real outcome is that humans are living better lives, and ideally taking care of the planet and all the other living beings that are on this planet. But that's the actual purpose of the organization. The financial outcomes will come after that.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I think I especially like the point you made about leaders can be anyone in the organization that are supporting other people and everything. And you didn't say it's overtly, but it's the servant leadership mindset, where you're there to support people around you and build those relationships and connect with people and make people better versions of themselves, which again benefits the whole. And I think that in turn ties really well into the other point you made about that the reason why we're a social species is survival. And I think as we move through late stage capitalism like we're in, and see all these issues and the kind of limits to growth and scaling when it comes to the money side of things, I think it's beneficial to have a new metric and a way of measuring success of a business, of an organization, having it be something like well-being and human, and like the biggest good for the most people or for the world.
Yeah,
a way to measure that and laud organizations and people for that metric, not just money, is I would be how I'd like to see a new system be built, because I think it's something that plays to the better parts of our nature rather than the more selfish kind, the selfish side. And so I'd love to hear more about it's kind of the 10,000, 30,000 foot view of these ideas. But what are some of the ways you've helped people implement these things, especially with the DJ perspective? Because it's such a interesting quirk you got there, by the way to go about this. So what are some of the ways and the kind of success stories you've seen working with organizations that are able to implement these sorts of ideas?
Yeah, I'll be really basic and simple with you. I'll just tell you a personal story. So I was working in an organization. I wasn't a senior leader hierarchically in any way. I was kind of in the middle of the organization, but I had my eye on the organizational culture. My sort of area of responsibility was change management, and that's a very technical sort of thing, but I really had my eye on the culture. And what was happening in this organization, it was a small sort of hometown organization that was growing really rapidly through acquisition. And I think probably a lot of folks who watch your podcast have experienced that, right? And as I was experiencing that, I was looking around at my colleagues, at my fellow humans in the workplace, and I was seeing them kind of lean back from the work, to lean back from the organization, lean back from the mission of the organization, because they didn't really understand what was going on, and they didn't really know if they were a part of it anymore. And I found this really sad. to be honest, because I really cared about this organization. And so, so what I started to do is I just started to have conversations with people and try to understand what was going on, what they felt was going on, what was going on for them internally, what kinds of, as I said, fears and motivations they had that were being kind of triggered. And from those conversations, I came to realize that people were feeling disconnected. They were disconnected from the company. They were disconnected from the mission of the company. They were disconnected from each other. And so as a tactic to try to deal with this, I suggested that we implement a once a week, basically open mic night on company time. The last hour of the workday, people could show up, sign up for one of 12 slots, 5-minute slots, and get up in front of their peers and talk about anything they wanted. Didn't need to be about work. In fact, it was better if it wasn't at all about work. And people showed up. And only 12 people could sort of get up on stage at a time, but everybody who was there was having this experience. So people were talking about their ultra marathon running. People were talking about how to yodel. People were talking about how to fix a bike. There were all of these crazy things, cooking, just all these things that were people sharing little parts of themselves. And I got to tell you, like, not just for the people who got up there and shared, but the people who were in the audience of these events, like, you started to see things shift. You really started to see morale shift. And I think what was really interesting about this wasn't the fix. I don't want to overplay it. But this was part of a fix to say, we got to reconnect with each other. We got to remember that we are humans, and we are humans outside of these walls. We're humans outside of whatever our title is in the organization. And I just loved seeing that. And that leads me to kind of where I am today with the DJing metaphor that you asked about, because I think so I've been DJing for about 18 years now. And I was DJing a party a couple years ago after my book came out. And I was DJing this party. The dance floor was packed. I was having a great time. People were having a great time. And I realized, I had this sort of metacognition moment, that the things that I was doing were the things that I recommend leaders do. The things that I was doing as a DJ to rock that party were the same things I recommend people do. So I was reading the room, right? Understanding who the party people were, what kind of party it was, and what people needed. What was getting in their way? If there were people who didn't want to get on the dance floor, what was going to help them have a good time, right? All that thing, because you don't have to get on the dance floor to enjoy the party, right? You can be singing along, you can be nodding your head, you can be tapping your foot. So reading the room, taking requests, but not actually always playing them. Right? I think this is something that leaders, right? This is really important, right? Like, as a DJ, not every request is a good request for that party. And most requests are poorly timed. Like, if I play the song that you just requested, Carl, it's going to just bring the party to a stop. It's going to clear the dance floor, right? But if I figure out the right time and place to mix it in, then it could really rock the party. It could be exactly the right thing. So that's something that I recommend leaders do too, right? Is take feedback, evaluate feedback, solicit input. And then the third thing that I was doing was, I felt like I was co-creating the vibe of the party, right, with the party people. Right? So as people were dancing, I would be checking them out. If somebody, smiled at me, or threw their fist in the air and gave me a look of approval, then I knew I was on the right track, and I would keep doing that. If people started to kind of inch away from the dance floor, I knew I needed to adjust what I was doing. This is another thing that I think leaders really need to do, is have that situational awareness, have their ears open at all times, and be watching what's happening and adjusting. Because the point is to get as many people in the party as possible. And again, as I said, you don't have to be on the dance floor to be part of the party, but it helps. But I know that not everybody likes to dance, and that's a part of it too, right? So figuring out how everybody can contribute, and helping them understand how they're contributing to the party. So that's where it brings me to today, where I'm actually literally DJing and delivering, actionable leadership advice to help folks create more human-centric workplaces.
Yeah, that metaphor is great. And as you were going through it, I just kept thinking, oh yeah, that's also a good parallel. Oh, that's another good parallel. And it really shows just how the skills that you need to be a good DJ, beyond the the technical skills of working a turntable and stuff are pretty much the same as the skills you need to be a good leader. Because it's not a specific business skill or a specific trade skill or specific area of expertise. It's just about being able to connect with people and listen, and the same sort of basic human relationships skills that people need, the quote unquote soft skills.
Yeah.
And it's funny how, like, and especially even for like leadership, where you like, and the whole requesting is kind of funny, where yeah, people request a song, but you can't just play it right away or at all, and you have to like receive it and accept, like, acknowledge it, but it's something that I think that at least, like, what really stood out to me, because people will get suggestions all the time and it can be overwhelming, and being able to accept it and acknowledge it and thank the person and still know that it's not the right way, doesn't match the vision of the party or vision of the business is important.
Yeah.
So it's really funny how well those skills overlap. So
Thank you. Well, I think I just one last thing I want to say about that, which is that, I think one of the key sort of overarching principles there, and you kind of hinted at it, is that the DJ isn't the star of the party, and the senior leader in the organization isn't the star of the show either. Right. The DJ is there to facilitate a good time for all the party people, right? And to manage the vibe of the room. And that's what a leader's job is as well. It's not to make it about them. And it's really about, putting that ego a little bit to the side and saying, how can I create the best time for the most amount of people?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Eryc. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to learn more about myself or Eryc, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.